Hope you're having an amazing one, Wrestlezona family, whenever you happen to be tuning in. My name is Lance Reece, your definitive host for the hour. I've been a fan of professional wrestling since I was about 6 years old, begging my parents to buy me action figures ever since I saw videos of Jeff Hardy's Swanton bombing on YouTube. We got another packed episode for you today, as we here on episode 6 of Wrestlezona on 88.7 The Pulse. We'll cover what's happening in the world of WWE, All Elite Wrestling, the Indies, and even wrestling here local in the Valley. Stay tuned to hear last week's Saturday night main event results, upcoming shows here in Arizona, and more all coming up. We have some exciting segments coming up this hour, such as our 10-bell history, and we also have an exclusive interview with pro wrestling icon and strongman, the Navajo Warrior, Steve Islas. Hopping into the world of WWE, we have some quick results from last week's Saturday night main event. Via Bleacher Report, Rhea Ripley took on Nia Jax to defend her Women's World title. The first match on the card saw Ripley take on Jax in a Women's World Championship match. The challenger delivered a headbutt during the official introductions to get an early advantage, but Ripley fired back with a dropkick as soon as the bell rang. Jax hit a huge Samoan drop from the middle rope for a 2 count right before the show cut to break. They were not wasting any time pulling at the big moves in an effort to win. With two powerhouses like this, it was no surprise that this was a hard-hitting and physical affair. Both competitors even used some moves we don't see from them very often. Jax came close a handful of times, but the Eradicator kept finding ways to kick out at two. Ripley even took some bigger risks than usual trying to take down the irresistible force. In the end, the champion retained with a riptide to close a fun encounter. Both women came away from this match looking great. Next up, the IC title was on the line when Braun Breaker defended the belt against Sheamus in the second match of the night. The Irishman was looking to win the only title that has eluded him in his WWE career, while the son of Rick Steiner was hoping to prove it was still his time in the spotlight. The champ had the upper hand at first, but being thrown into the timekeeper's area in the most painful way possible turned the tide in Sheamus' favor. We returned from a break to see Sheamus back on defense and taking a gutbuster. The Celtic Warrior nailed him with a huge knee to the face once he was back to his feet. Breaker lined up for a spear but ran into a bro kick. He had to put his foot on the rope to break the count because he was unable to kick out. Once he regained his footing, Breaker nailed the spear for the pin and the win. This bout was just as good as their previous encounters. Sheamus is a reliable veteran and Breaker is a star on the rise. They worked together to make this feel slightly unpredictable, which is always a good thing. After that, Shawn Michaels oversaw the contract signing between Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes for the title match at the Royal Rumble next weekend. Rhodes signed, but KO wanted to get something off his chest first. He took offense to Rhodes, saying that he always took the easy way out. Both men hung their belts on the holder that will hang above the ring during their ladder match at the Rumble. Owens attacked Rhodes and tried to hit Michaels with a pile driver, but Rhodes hit him with a super kick and then HBK hit Sweet Chin Music to send him out the ring. The next match was Jacob Fatu versus Braun Strowman, which WWE hyped with a special video package showing their respective stats. Strowman took control early and sent Fatu out of the ring, but the Samoan Werewolf did the same to him and moments later followed him up with a suicide dive. As expected, this was a hard fare. Strowman and Fatu are known for being hard-hitting powerhouses, and they delivered on those reputations with a match that took both men all around the ring. Fatu snapped and ended up throwing the ref out of the ring so he could continue hitting running hip strikes on Strowman. The ref called the match off, so we will likely get a rematch down the line. The way this ended was obviously nobody's ideal outcome, but the match leading up to that point was solid. Their next encounter will likely see them up the ante even further with their destruction. Strowman was a bloody mess after Fatu hit several moonsaults as officials tried their best to break up the fight. In the main event of Saturday night's main event, saw Gunther defend the World Heavyweight Championship against Jey Uso. Jey tried to test himself by going chop for chop with the Ring General, and it almost looked like he might win until Gunther whipped him into the corner as hard as possible. The world champion began to assert his dominance as the show cut to a break. Uso began making a comeback when we returned, but he was still showing signs of the beating he had taken. He did an excellent job selling the brutality of Gunther's offense. The crowd was on its feet when it looked like Uso might clinch the victory, but 2 spears and a superfly splash couldn't put the champion away. Gunther turned a 3rd spear into a pair of power bombs to get the win and retain the title. This was an entertaining match, and even with the predictable ending, they had the crowd thinking we might see an upset at points. Both men delivered in this one. This episode, which is coming out February 2nd, was produced before the 1st of February, meaning we do not have access to the coverage of Royal Rumble, but we will cover that exclusively for our WWE section next week. Again, such an eventful week for WWE. I'm Lance Reece with Wrestlezona on 88.7 The Pulse. Let's recap All Elite Wrestling's week. So far for AEW's Grand Slam Australia event, there have been 2 matches announced for the card. Those 2 matches being Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega taking on Kyle Fletcher and Takeshita of the Don Callis family in a tag team match. The other match is the champion Mariah May defending her AEW Women's World Championship in a singles match against Timeless Toni Storm. In other news, All Elite Wrestling is coming to Phoenix in February, on February 19th, a Wednesday. This is for TV tapings of AEW Dynamite and Collision at the Arizona Financial Theater. This is coming a week after my birthday, and I look forward to being able to get tickets to go to this. These TV tapings come off the heels of Grand Slam Australia, and announced for the event so far the likes of Kenny Omega, Jon Moxley, Cope, and MJF. Not too much to say on our All Elite update. I'm Lance Reece with Wrestlezona on 88.7 The Pulse. Let's get into some upcoming Arizona shows. The Arizona Wrestling Federation has 2 events coming up. One in February on the 8th called Showdown at the Cages in Phoenix, Arizona, featuring Matt Cardona. Cardona is teaming up with their champion Chubby Depp to take on Super Crazy and Chris Evans. Also coming up for the Federation on March 1st at Bull Shooters is Arizona Wrestling Federation's Triumph, featuring the likes of Alexander Hammerstone, the aforementioned TNA's Moose, Brian Cage, Brittany Brooks, and Mustafa Ali. Juggalo Championship Wrestling returns to the Valley on March 7th at the Encore in Tucson, Arizona, with the likes of Willie Mack on the card. Impact Zone Wrestling IZW has their annual Monster event coming up February 22nd at Bull Shooters in Phoenix. On this card, you will see the likes of Parada, Can't Stop Jamal, Evan Daniels, Alice Blair, EJ Sparks, Gino Rivera, Joe Graves, and of course, today's interviewee, the Navajo Warrior, who will be in the main event fighting TNA's Frankie Kazarian. Very much looking forward to this match. Phoenix Championship Wrestling is back March 15th live on Broadway at the Eagles Community Center. Not much has been announced for this card yet, but again, looking forward to another good PCW show. Over the past weekend, I went out to the Wrestling Guy store in Phoenix for the first time, which was actually our second guest on the show, Tony Vela of the Wrestling Guy store in Phoenix. Me and my dad got to meet Jerry the King Lawler, who was in the store for a special guest appearance. That was very cool. You know, I was actually originally supposed to meet Jerry back in 2019 at a Cactus League Wrestling show in Tucson. Same event where I met Mick Foley, and I forgot what happened there, and I brought it up to Jerry actually in the store, and he also was unaware what happened. So I think it might have been something with the promotion, but who knows. Game Changer Wrestling is back to the Nile Theater in Mesa, Arizona on Sunday, March 2nd for their Just Being Honest event. Announced so far for the card is Masha Slamovich versus Drew Parker for the JCW World Championship, and Mace Warner versus Super Crazy. That puts an end to our news section of the show. We have an interview with Steve Islas, better known in ring as the Navajo Warrior, coming right up. Let's get into our 10-bell history. 10-bell history. 1. WrestleMania 3 is the last time Hulk Hogan successfully defended the WWF title on a pay-per-view. He was 0-4 in title defenses after that. 2. AJ Styles has wrestled in both Undertaker and Randy Savage's last match and is the only person to become Grand Slam champion in WWE and TNA. 3. Bobby Roode was in Hulk Hogan and Triple H's last matches. 4. Batista was a grandfather at the same time he was a world heavyweight champion. 5. Ric Flair was kidnapped as a baby into an illegal adoption ring and has no idea who his real parents are. 6. Nobody born in the month of September has won the WWE title. 7. Rey Mysterio and Stone Cold debuted the exact same year. 8. Taylor Swift used to serve as a babysitter for Jeff Jarrett's daughter. 9. The Amazing Kung Fu, the first wrestler to use a martial art gimmick, knew nothing about Chinese Kung Fu and was actually a judo black belt. 10. Ox Baker played one of Kurt Russell's enemies in 1997's Escape from New York. That wraps up our 10-bell history. How is everyone's weekend so far? Any good wrestling shows you've been to? Any upcoming? Let me know on Instagram at Wrestlezona is where you can find me. I'm Lance Reece with Wrestlezona on 88.7 The Pulse. Now let's get into our interview with pro wrestling icon and strongman, the Navajo Warrior. Let's get started. I wanted to start off this interview by asking, who is the Navajo Warrior?
Well, I am the Navajo Warrior. My name is Steve Islas. The Navajo Warrior is my wrestling name, and I've been wrestling now for 35 years. This will be my 35th year in professional wrestling.
Wow. Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Gilbert, Arizona.
Arizona, yeah.
Gilbert, Arizona. So born in Phoenix, but raised in Gilbert.
It's pretty nearby. Why is pro wrestling so important to the Arizona Southwest region?
In my opinion, I believe it's important because wrestling is a great form of entertainment and sport. You know, so when Vince McMahon coined that phrase, sports entertainment, it was pretty spot on because you get the athleticism of sports, you get the entertainment value of a movie or television show, or, you know, it's a bit of everything. You know, you've got drama, you've got comedy, you've got just mystery, everything all encapsulated into one.
And you have been wrestling for quite some time, like you said, 35 years.
Yes, sir.
This year. And this year is your retirement year. Am I correct?
Yes, but I don't like to use the term retirement because we never really retire. You know,
yeah.
It's my last year of active competition.
Year of active competition.
Yeah. So once I finish up that last match in November, you might see me one match next year, maybe, or, it just really depends. But for now, yeah, we're just calling it the end of this active competition.
Well, talk to us a bit about the end of the active competition, how it's got you feeling, and.
I feel like at 35 years, I think it's the right time. There's really nothing more I can do. You know, I've done it all. I've traveled the world. I've been lucky enough to get to live out a dream. You know, and I kind of branched out into competing in strongman as well. So, you know, it kind of takes up a lot of my time, the training for the competing, and then the training for wrestling, and then of course the family. So it's a big split of my time. So something needed to wind up, and the wrestling it's the right time.
The strongman competitions seem legit. I see your Instagram stories sometimes, 4 a.m, just pumping iron.
We're training at 4 a.m. In fact, coming up on February 8th and 9th, I'll be competing in Japan. I'll be in Kobe, Japan, doing a strongman competition. What
does the average meal look like for you before going into a strongman?
Into an event, because into training, it's nothing at all. I train on an empty stomach at 4 a.m. But when we go into a competition the night before, heavy carbs, a nice lean white meat, because you don't want to weigh yourself down too much with that. The carbs are going to take up a lot of space. But on average, we're looking at about 4,000 calories a day of just to keep my weight up to what I need it for competition.
What was the progression of Navajo kid turning into the Navajo Warrior?
Two reasons, two things that changed me from the Navajo kid to the Navajo Warrior. The first was I was getting older, and you're in your late 20s, right? And you're not really a kid anymore. And then I happened to have a match with WWE, called a dark match, non-televised match, and Howard Finkel was the ring announcer. And so when he introduced me, it was the Navajo Kid. And when the match ended, he said, "And your winner, the Navajo Warrior." Now, I'm sure it was a mistake on his part, but it was such a cool mistake that I was like, whoa, hold on a second. You know, that's cool. So I went with the Navajo Warrior. And I've always thanked him for that, ever since before he passed, like letting him know, like, you're the one that named me the Navajo Warrior,
Wow.
So yeah.
That is a very unique story. And what were those dark matches like back in the 90s?
Back in the 90s, when the WWF, WWE wanted to look at talent, they would book them in a dark match. So they were, so for myself, it was really exciting because you're wrestling, you're the first thing people see when they're in that arena. You're the first match. So first, they don't know who you are. A few will, but most of the crowd doesn't know who you are. So trying to get them behind you is a real challenge because you're not one of the main WWE superstars, So I enjoy that challenge because getting that crowd to start to react and cheer it's really cool. It's such a cool feeling. They're hectic. You're told before you go out there you have a certain amount of time for your match, and then right before you're about to step out of gorilla position, they might change it. They might cut it in half. They might add on another couple of minutes. So keeping time is a very important part of what we do. So especially if you're going to be doing live television, because every minute is money, so they want to make sure that you can keep the time that they tell you to keep, or if they need to extend the time, that you can fill it. So that was a big part of what they looked at in the dark match as well. Not just your wrestling or how you carry yourself or how a crowd reacts to you, but if you're able to keep that time.
Who originated with the name Sean Dakota for you?
Sean Dakota. So I wanted to go with my name with Steve, but there were other Steves wrestling. There were other Seans in wrestling as well, but my trainer was Steve Gatorwolf, so I didn't want to be another Steve on a lot of the same shows that my trainer was on. So I went with Sean, and Dakota was kind of like the not generic, but like a common name that we could use for a Native American wrestler, So if I went with a more traditional Navajo name, then it would be harder for people to either say or remember. It's like Dakota is a nice, simple, catches your attention, and makes it also fits with the character.
Where did your friendship with Hulk Hogan come from?
Well, I was a lifelong Hulkamaniac. My very first live wrestling event was in 1983, and it was the AWA, and he was involved in a body slam challenge match. And that's what hooked me, wanted me to become a professional wrestler. When Eye of the Tiger was playing and just seeing him come through the curtain, that's when I looked to my mom and said, that's what I want to do. I want to do this. And so being a fan for so long, and then finally getting to work on cards that he's on, I'm going to take my chance. I'm going to take my shot and start trying to strike up conversation, and so it just went from that to, thanking him for, inspiring me, and then just slowly became a friendship, so now we see each other quite often. Like just a year ago, I was competing in a strongman event in Clearwater Beach that he came to, and then just seeing him a few weeks ago at the Raw Netflix premiere, so it's a cool thing because, he was, like I said, the inspiration for myself to become a professional wrestler.
How was that going to the Monday Night Raw debut for Netflix?
Well, for me, it was such a cool event because it's historic. It's the very first one on the new Netflix era, but I was there to work as well, so it was like hectic. There're just so many people there, especially with it being in Los Angeles. You had a lot of celebrities and basically a lot of the people from The Office that came down, and a lot of people from Netflix. And so it's like the backstage area was just flooded with people. So it was kind of hard for myself to make my way around to where I needed to be to get my job done. So I was like going back and forth and just kind of like, weaving in and out between people to try to get to where I needed to go. But it was really cool though. I got a chance to go out into the arena while the show was going on to just feel that energy, and watch the crowd reactions and just to see it all, from the stands. It was a cool event.
Yeah, it was really cool. Even at home, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine the energy in person.
Yeah, that arena was, brand new. Each individual seat has lights on it on
Wow.
the armrest, so that's how you would see a lot of the different lights just throughout the arena.
Yeah.
Those are built into the seats. The seats even have a sound meter. So like at a basketball game, if they want to know who the loudest fan in the crowd is, it picks up your
Vibration.
sound. Yeah, vibration and sound. It's amazing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go by a list of names,
Okay.
and I want you to give me your initial thoughts on the person and what they mean to you in your career.
All right.
So starting off, Yokozuna.
Oh, Yokozuna, Big Rodney. He was my very first. No, he wasn't my first, but he was on the second night of tapings. I got to wrestle Yokozuna, and I was intimidated. I was scared. Of course, the guy was enormous. And then I wrestled him again a few years later, and then I teamed with him on an independent show. So it was myself and Yokozuna as a tag team. And that was much easier on my body than having to wrestle against him. But funnest guy. He was always cracking jokes, having a good time. But yeah, I love Yoko.
Hawaiian Lion.
Hawaiian Lion, my brother, my tag team partner for 20 years.
Wow.
Over 20 years, we tag teamed and wrestled throughout the United States, overseas, wrestled in Japan, wrestled in Mexico, wrestled in Canada, wrestled Guam, Korea, so we've seen a lot together. And yeah, he's my kids call him Uncle John, because he's been around them since they were young and little, and seen them grow. And then of course his son, I'm his son's godfather, so like we're family.
Yeah. The Honky Tonk Man.
Honky Tonk Man, the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time.
Yeah.
But Honky Tonk Man helped me immensely in the beginning of my career, when we didn't have the internet back then. It wasn't easy to just reach out to a promoter and say, "Hey, I'd like to come wrestle for you." We had to send letters in the mail, or a VHS tape of our matches and promo pictures, 8x10 promo picture, and we send that stuff out. And to have someone like the Honky Tonk Man put his name on mine, and he would tell promoters that he would wrestle for, "Hey, you need to take a look at this kid," and he opened a lot of doors for me. And so of course it was up to me to keep them open and, prove myself, but he opened those doors for me. And I spent a lot of time with him on a European tour, wrestling him every night. So just learning the small details that are needed in wrestling, in a match. So yeah, I'm forever thankful for Honky Tonk Man.
Mike Knox.
Mike Knox. I like to call him he's like my favorite son. My one of my students, and he was one of the early students of mine when I started training wrestlers. And he was just a natural. He would drive from El Centro, California to Mesa, Arizona twice a week to train, and never complained. That's a long drive. He would drive there. We'd train for a couple hours, 2 to 3 hours. Then he would turn around and drive back, and worked his butt off. And great guy, great family man now. He's got a little girl, his wife and his daughter now. And watching him just tear things up in the NWA makes me so proud.
Gabriel Gallo.
So Gallo and I, we were the original Native Blood, and this was before the Hawaiian Line. And Gallo and I, as he was learning on the road with me. So we traveled the world together. We wrestled in Japan together. We wrestled throughout the United States together as a team. And then he changed his path as far as like wanting to become a singles wrestler, and cut the hair, changed the name, and went on to do things as GQ Gallo at first, and then Gabriel Gallo, and now he's training wrestlers, and he's carrying on the tradition of what we started with IZW, as a training school. He was one of my students. Now he's got his students, and so Gallo, he makes me proud because I get to see what he's done, not only in the ring, but now outside of the ring, teaching that next generation of wrestlers.
Yeah. I've talked to some people who said they have them as his trainer, like Zamaya, for example, and she speaks very highly of him.
Yeah, he's a great teacher. I've watched some of his classes, on how he trains, and like I said, it's a lot of the way he was taught. So it's like he's passing it along, which is great.
It's good. I got 2 more names to go by. Yes. Matt Bourne.
Matt Bourne, Doink the Clown.
Yeah.
Maniac Matt Bourne. Great guy. He just misunderstood, and then he hit his low points, but always great in the ring. He was always great in the ring. One of those just tough, you knew you were in the ring with him. You felt it, but very safe and helped you get, as a young babyface wrestler, he helps you get over big.
Final one, Prototype, John Cena.
John Cena, the Prototype. Man, if there was ever anyone that you could look at in the beginning and say he's going to be big, he was the one. When I first met John, it was late 1999 at Ultimate Pro Wrestling, Southern California, and I was like, this kid's got something. And then bringing him out to Arizona and wrestling with him on the reservation tours, and then watching him grow, like he was green at the time, but he was learning. And then I would just trust him enough to say, okay, the match is yours. You call it, because traditionally, the heel will call a match.
Yeah.
He was the heel in the match, and then I just call it, and he was great. And then never changed, with all the success, always the same person. He never stopped being John.
Still calling his matches.
Yeah, yes, sir. And but yeah, John, great guy. And it's funny that we were just talking about him the other day, my wife and I, because we saw him on a McDonald's commercial, and I looked at her and I go, I would never have thought, back in 99, 2000, watching him with his sack of McDoubles that was his go-to, a sack of McDoubles that he would eat at the shows. You know how most guys, like, they try to act like they're, health conscious, and they have their gallon of water and their Tupperware dish of chicken breast and rice. Oh, not John. He had his McDoubles. And then it's like, wow, now he's doing commercials for McDonald's.
That's great. Other than home, what would you say would be your favorite place you've wrestled in? Would it be like Japan or?
Yeah, Japan was my favorite, just because, little backstory to it. So the main reason I ever wanted to wrestle in Japan was because when I was starting out, we had wrestlers on the card. You had Jimmy Snuka, you had Honky Tonk Man, you had Greg the Hammer Valentine, and some of them would be wearing this jacket, and it was like a satin jacket, and it had like a longhorn on it, and it said Ribera Steakhouse on the back. And I would always ask, what is that? What's Ribera Steakhouse? Why do you guys all have this similar jacket? And they explained to me that it's a steakhouse in Japan, in Tokyo, that the wrestlers would go to get American style food, to get a steak, and and so I was like, oh, that's cool. So then that automatically switched over to my goal list. I want to wrestle in Japan so that I can get one of these jackets. So, and then years, go by, and I'm wrestling, and then I watch the style, and how the crowd is very reserved, and they would just, clap when they would see something they liked. It was not like an American crowd where they'd get rowdy, and so I was like, man, I don't know if that fits with my style of wrestling, if my style of wrestling would fit in Japan. Well, Shinya Hashimoto started a 0-1 and in 2001. And so in 2002, he requested that Gallo and myself come and wrestle against their tag team champions. So I was like, okay. I was very nervous, of course, because it's like, is our style going to get over in Japan? Is it going to work there? And sure enough, they knew exactly what they were doing when they produced us. They had us coming through the crowd on our entrance, and then they just everything that we could do with our war cry and the beating the war drums on the ring, and the crowd just started to come alive. And then they started to do the war cry back, and then it was just one of those things where everything just clicked.
Yeah.
And I'd never felt anything like that before from a crowd that should be so reserved, and so I thought that was awesome.
What is the crowning achievement in your career as an in-ring athlete?
That's a tough one, because I think that, honestly, just being one, being an in-ring athlete is because for every wrestler that is out there, there are thousands that want to be in that position. So to be able to say that I've done it, and at the level that I've been able to do it, that to me, that's the crowning achievement.
It's a good success.
Yeah.
Favorite match you've ever wrestled?
Favorite for a couple of reasons. I know the name's controversial to say now, but Chris Benoit. Main reason that it was my favorite was because I went into that match with zero preparation. I was in my street clothes. I wasn't going to have a match that night. The show started. Johnny Ace comes over and says, "Steve, can you wrestle Benoit?" I said, "Of course." He's like, "You're on in 2 segments," meaning you're on in 2 matches. So I had to run to the dressing room, get dressed, get to gorilla position. Chris came in. We said her hellos and got the finish and was like, it's time to go. So everything that we did besides the finish was on the fly, and I was able to keep up and keep the match flowing and just take my openings when they were there. It was all just from experience, because if this would have been even 5 years earlier in my career, I probably would have fallen flat on my face and failed. But I felt very proud of that match, because with no preparation and being able to perform the way I did, I'm very proud of that.
It was the right place, right time.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I look back at your cage match and some of the history. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you wrestled Owen Hart.
Yes, wrestled Owen Hart, and that was when he was King of Hearts, Owen Hart. So and so I wrestled Owen. So
what was he like as a performer to go against?
Easy,
so
easy, very giving. Even though he was the heel, he would still gave me some good openings because of the size difference. He wasn't a big guy, so he's like, all right, we're going to wrestle. To whereas, other opponents like Vader and Yokozuna, the bigger guys, you're not getting offense in at all because they're so much bigger.
Who was your favorite big guy to wrestle? Was it Vader, Yoko, King Kong Bundy?
Yoko was, because as big as he was, he was so light. He'd hit you with that big destructive looking leg drop, and you wouldn't feel a thing. It was beautiful, and I always came out of the matches with Yokozuna feeling as good as I did when I went in. Now Vader, on the other hand, I felt like I got ran over by a car and then put in reverse and then ran me back over the other way and then put back in drive and ran me over again. So, there are differences. And Bundy was great. Very heavy-handed, though, like you knew you were in a match with Bundy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I could tell by your song choice on Instagram and your posts that you are a big hip-hop fan.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a favorite rapper that keeps you motivated in the gym or before a match?
So I love everything from 80s rock to and the hip hop but yeah, for the gym, we're either going to there's going to be a drive-by or going to a barbecue. That's what we say when we're in our gym. In the gym, we got all that hip hop playing from the 90s. And so Ice Cube's really big. And also Snoop Dogg, early Snoop Dogg. But yeah, Cube usually is the one that gets you fired up, yeah.
Classics. What was it like beating the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov to become National Wrestling Federation tag champs with Jules Strongbow?
That was amazing because growing up as a fan in the era that I grew up in, watching that early 80s wrestling, the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov were the top guys. They were, the biggest heels in wrestling. So getting to even wrestle against them was such a cool experience, and then beating them for the titles was like unreal, and it was one of those things where it was like a dream come true.
I just want to mention the fact you tagged against the Young Bucks at a point.
A few times, yeah.
A few times, actually.
Yeah. Hawaiian Lion and myself, we teamed against them a few times.
What's it like working with them?
Oh, so at that time, they were young in their careers, so easy. I would like to think that it'd still be the same, because they're professionals and they're great guys, but they were so easy to work with. They adapted to our style instead of us having to adapt to theirs, so it was one of those where it worked out really well for us. But yeah, they were fun to work with.
You've had some interesting tag history, not just with your friends, but like you mentioned, you tagged with Yokozuna, you tagged with Honky Tonk Man, who turned on you during a match. What was up with that?
It was all to set up to the next one, but yeah, it's like, I thought you were my friend. And then a strange one that most people won't remember the name, but Firebreaker Chip from WCW. I teamed with him and for one match against Honky Tonk Man and Demolition Axe. So that was one of those like strange matchups. Like their team was a strange mix, and ours was a strange mix, but it
worked.
It worked.
That's good. You have an upcoming match this February at IZW Monster against Frankie Kazarian in Phoenix, I should mention, who you first wrestled Kazarian 20 plus years ago in Phoenix.
Yes.
What was your mentality going into that match back then compared to your current mentality?
So back then, a lot more confidence. We were younger, we were stronger, we were faster, and he was a lot newer, a lot less experienced, but always like so smooth and good in the ring. I knew it was always going to be a good match because anything that I ever saw him do was always great. Now, as much experience as he's gained, being the king of TNA and myself, with the experience that I have, I know that you're going to see things that you haven't seen in a long time. It's not going to be your typical match. It's going to be two guys that are just going to try to outdo each other, outsmart each other, outperform each other, and leave the fans with the best match that we can possibly give them.
I'm pretty sure I first saw you wrestle back at IZW Monster 2020 before pandemic. You teamed with Hawaiian Lion. Good times. Always a good time at the IZW shows.
Oh yeah, I'm glad that we brought it back.
Yeah. What was that progress like, bringing it back?
So when we started IZW, at first it was a training school, and that's where I trained people like Mike Knox and Hawaiian Lion and Gallo and Hollywood Yates. I had a good crew of students, and we were all wrestling for a group called Western States Wrestling at the Coliseum. And the Coliseum changed owners, and then they didn't want wrestling anymore. So Western States kept saying, well, we're going to find a new place. We're going to find a new place. Well, in the meantime, I'm getting my crew wrestling bookings outside of Arizona. So we're keeping busy. But I started to think, like, we'll give them about a year. A year went by. They still hadn't found a new venue. So it's like Gallo, Hollywood, and myself decided, okay, we're going to start running shows in the Valley with IZW. And so that's how it started. And that was, I think, 2001, 2002. And we ran until 2008, 2009. And that's when I started working with WWE on the video games. And so we used to run every other Tuesday night. And back then, my TV schedule with WWE was Monday night, Tuesday night. So I couldn't be there for the shows anymore. So I let them run a little longer without me, and then I decided we just needed to close the doors because it was hard not being there to, just make sure, oversee everything and make sure everything goes well. So years later, you know, how you go through Instagram or you see pictures, and I found my old show poster from the very first show I ran, and I was like, how would anyone, I posted it, and then it said, you know, what would people think if we tried to do a reunion? And then just the comments and messages that I would get saying, you need to bring it back, let's do a reunion show. So we did an IZW reunion show, and it sold out. It was a success. And then Greg DeMarco, who helped me promote the show, said, what do you think about bringing IZW back? And I was like, yeah, I really don't want to worry about running a promotion. You know, I'm busy enough as it is. And he said, no, we can do it quarterly. We can do, you know, one show per quarter. And I said, as soon as it stops being fun, I'm out. We're going to stop. Right. And he said, all right, deal. And then we went from there. And that's when we brought IZW back. And it's been great ever since. You know, we haven't had to worry about a crowd showing up. We're always filling the place up wherever we are. We started out at Sun Studios, and then we outgrew Sun Studios. And then now we're at Bullshooters, and we're filling it to capacity. So I think we're going to stay with Bullshooters because it's a good location, good building for wrestling, you know. So yeah. And we draw a great crowd there. So the more we move, you know, the less people follow, you know, because wrestling fans like what they like, and if you make it inconvenient for them, they're not going to want to, you know, oh, another new venue. Now we got to go try to find this new place. You know, so we keep it where we like it, and Bullshooters has been great with us, so we're gonna continue there.
As we wrap up our 6th episode of Wrestlezona on 88.7 The Pulse, I'm Lance Reece, joined in studio with Steve Islas, professionally known as the Navajo Warrior. And Steve, I have one last question for you.
Yes, sir.
As you approach your in-ring retirement in the year 2025, what is one place or face you wish you got to wrestle in your 35-plus year career?
Oh, man, one place I would love to have wrestled is Madison Square Garden. You know, I mean, that's the Mecca, you know. So, yeah, that's one place. And if I could have wrestled against Hulk Hogan in his prime and myself in my prime, that would have been a dream come true, dream match for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Steve, for coming on Wrestlezona. I really appreciate it.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Well, that wraps up episode 6 of Wrestlezona on 88.7 The Pulse. I'm Lance Reece. Do you have a favorite song you want to hear? Again, shoot me a DM on Instagram at Wrestlezona and tell me your favorite part of the show. Until next time,